Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
Here is the essay, responding to the above directives. Stephen J. Gould's Ontogeny and Phylogeny, published in 1977, though rooted in his 1969 dissertation, stands as a monumental contribution to evolutionary biology. Its influence resonates across academic disciplines, shaping discourse on development, evolution, and the intricate connection between them. This essay undertakes a sustained, critical evaluation of the arguments and claims presented within ontogeny and phylogeny, examining specific sections of the text to uncover its profound implications. Section 1, Introduction to Heterochrony and Recapitulation. The initial chapters of Ontogeny and Phylogeny establish the historical background of heterochrony, changes in the timing or rate of developmental processes, and its relationship to the persistent, yet often problematic, concept of recapitulation, the idea that an organism briefly replays its evolutionary history during its development. Gould meticulously dissects the history of recapitulation theory as articulated by figures like Ontogeny, revealing the complex interplay of scientific observation, philosophical commitments, and social biases that shaped its formulation. He demonstrates how Haeckel's biogenetic law, positing that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, became entangled with notions of progress, hierarchy, and racial supremacy, imbuing scientific discourse with unexamined assumptions about the superiority of certain forms over others. Gould's examination effectively critiques the oversimplification inherent in the idea of recapitulation, showing how it distorts our understanding of the complex relationship between development and evolution. He doesn't completely dismiss insight into developmental processes, but cautions against accepting recapitulation in its Haeckelian form. Gould's analysis emphasizes the critical importance of distinguishing between observation and interpretation. He acknowledges that certain developmental patterns may appear to resemble ancestral forms, but he insists that such resemblances should not be automatically interpreted as evidence of recapitulation. Rather, they should be examined within a rigorous framework that considers the diverse mechanisms of evolutionary change, including heterochrony, pedomorphosis retention of juvenile features, and paramorphosis development of features beyond the adult form of an ancestor. The meticulous examination of Haeckel underscores the necessity of critical thinking while accepting or rejecting popular scientific claims. Section 2, The Mechanisms of Heterochrony. Gould's explication of heterochrony is not merely a descriptive account of its historical development. He proceeds to outline the specific mechanisms through which changes in developmental timing can generate evolutionary novelty. He identifies two primary dimensions of heterochrony: rate and timing. Rate heterochrony involves alterations in the speed at which particular developmental processes proceed, while timing heterochrony involves changes in the onset or offset of these processes. Gould further subdivides these categories, creating a nuanced and comprehensive framework for understanding the diverse manifestations of heterochrony in evolutionary history. He elaborates on pedomorphosis, where descendants resemble juvenile forms of their ancestors, and paramorphosis, where descendants extend development beyond the ancestral adult form. Within these categories, he identifies specific mechanisms such as acceleration, increased rate of development, neoteny, decreased rate of development, predisplacement, earlier onset of development, post-displacement, later onset of development, hypermorphosis, prolonged period of development, and progenesis, early cessation of development. Through these concrete examples and definitions, Gould offers insight into the potential for significant evolutionary change through relatively simple alterations in developmental programs. He demonstrates the elegance and power of heterochrony as an evolutionary mechanism, challenging the notion that evolutionary change requires drastic alterations in genetic structure or developmental architecture, by highlighting the profound changes that can arise from shifts in mere developmental timing. Section 3. Pedomorphosis and human evolution. Gould considers the implications of heterochrony for understanding human evolution. He proposes that pedomorphosis may have played a significant role in shaping several distinguishing features of humans. He argues that humans retain juvenile characteristics to a greater extent than other primates, pointing to features such as the relatively large brain size, flat face, and lack of prominent brow ridges found in human adults. He presents the hypothesis that these features reflect a slowing down of the developmental rate relative to other primates, allowing for a prolonged period of brain growth and a retention of juvenile cranial morphology. He addresses challenges with these conclusions with intellectual honesty. He acknowledges that the pedomorphosis hypothesis is not without its difficulties. He recognizes that some human features, such as a prolonged period of human childhood, are not necessarily indicative of pedomorphosis. He notes that they might represent alternative heterochronic processes. Despite these challenges, Gould maintains that the pedomorphosis hypothesis offers a valuable perspective on human evolution, providing a developmental framework for understanding the origins of human uniqueness. He underscores the importance of considering developmental processes when attempting to reconstruct evolutionary history, urging researchers to move beyond simple comparisons of adult morphologies. Section 4. Allometry and heterochrony. Gould explores the concept of allometry, the study of how the proportions of different body parts change with overall body size. He argues that allometry provides another lens through which to understand the relationship between development and evolution. He proposes that changes in allometric relationships can be driven by heterochronic processes, leading to significant alterations in the overall morphology of organisms. For example, he examines the relationship between grain size and body size in various mammalian species, demonstrating that different species exhibit different allometric trajectories. He then argues that these differences in allometric relationships may reflect underlying differences in the timing or rate of brain development. Gould argues that allometry provides a powerful tool for studying the evolution of form by analyzing the allometric relationships within and between species. Researchers can gain insights into the developmental processes that have shaped the diversity of life. He cautions against interpreting allometric relationships as simple reflections of adaptive pressures. He emphasizes that allometric constraints can also play a significant role in limiting a range of possible evolutionary trajectories. Section 5. Adaptation and constraint. Gould delves into the interplay between adaptation and constraint in evolutionary processes. He challenges the reductionist view that all evolutionary change is driven solely by natural selection acting on adaptive traits. Instead, he highlights the importance of recognizing the role of developmental constraints in shaping the core of He proposes that developmental constraints can limit the range of possible evolutionary trajectories. Even in the face of strong selective pressures, he acknowledges that natural selection is a powerful force that can drive evolutionary change. He emphasizes that natural selection operates within the context of developmental constraints, shaping the evolution of organisms in ways that are both adaptive and developmentally feasible. He uses the example of the vertebrate limb to illustrate his point. He notes that the basic structure of the vertebrate limb has remained remarkably conserved throughout evolutionary history, despite the diverse functions that limbs perform in different species. He argues that this conservation reflects the influence of developmental constraints, limiting the ways in which limbs can be modified by natural selection. Gould advocated for a more holistic approach to evolutionary biology, one that takes into account the complex interplay between adaptation, constraint, and developmental processes. He suggests that only by embracing this more nuanced perspective can we fully understand the richness and complexity of life's evolutionary history. Section 6. The spandrels of San Marco and the Pamlossian paradigm. Gould introduces the concept of spandrels to illustrate the importance of recognizing non-adaptive traits in evolutionary biology. Drawing an analogy from the architecture of the San Marco Cathedral in Venice, He argues that certain traits may arise as necessary byproducts of other evolutionary changes, rather than as direct results of natural selection. He challenges what he terms the Panglossian paradigm, the tendency to assume that every trait must have a specific adaptive function. He argues that this perspective can lead to overly simplistic and inaccurate interpretations of evolutionary history. Gould provides alternative explanations for the evolution of various traits. He encourages researchers to consider the possibility that a trait may have arisen as a byproduct of other evolutionary changes. He uses the example of the human chin to illustrate his point. He notes that the human chin is a unique feature that is not found in other primates. He argues that the human chin may have arisen as a byproduct of changes in the overall shape of the human mandible, rather than as a direct result of natural selection. Gould's concept of spandrels has had a lasting impact on evolutionary biology, encouraging researchers to adopt a more critical and nuanced approach to the study of adaptation. He cautions against assuming that every trait must have a specific adaptive function, advocating for a more holistic perspective that takes into account the complex interplay between adaptation, constraint, and developmental process. Section 7. The relationship of macroevolution to microevolution. Gould addresses the relationship between microevolution, evolutionary change within populations, and macroevolution, evolutionary change above the species level. He explores the debate about whether macroevolution is simply a scaled-up version of microevolution or whether it involves distinct processes and mechanisms. He acknowledges that microevolution is undoubtedly a powerful force that can drive evolutionary change. He argues that macroevolution involves processes that are not simply extrapolations of microevolutionary processes. He proposes that macroevolutionary change may be driven by factors such as species selection, where entire species, rather than individual organisms subject to selection process. Gould suggests that macroevolutionary patterns may be influenced by factors such as mass extinctions, which can dramatically alter the course of evolutionary history. He argues that mass extinctions can create opportunities for the diversification of new lineages. He points to the example of the Cambrian explosion, a period of rapid diversification of animal life that occurred approximately 540 million years ago. He suggests that the Cambrian explosion may have been triggered by a mass extinction that cleared the way for the evolution of new body plans. Gould's analysis emphasizes the importance of considering both microevolutionary and macroevolutionary processes while attempting to understand the history of life. He encourages researchers to move beyond simplistic extrapolations from microevolution to macroevolution, advocating for a more nuanced perspective that takes into account the complex interplay of factors that shape the direction and pace of evolutionary change. Section 8. Punctuated equilibria and the tempo of evolution. Gould, along with Niles Eldredge, details the theory of punctuated equilibria, a concept that challenges the traditional view of evolution as a gradual and continuous process. They propose that species often remain relatively unchanged for long periods of time, punctuated by short bursts of rapid evolutionary change associated with speciation events. They argue that this pattern of punctuated equilibria is more consistent with the fossil record than the traditional view of gradual evolution. Gould and Eldredge acknowledge that gradual evolution does occur. They emphasize that punctuated equilibria represents a distinct mode of evolutionary change that is particularly important at the macroevolutionary level. They present evidence from the fossil record to support their theory, pointing to examples of species that appear to have remained relatively unchanged for millions of years, followed by rapid bursts of evolutionary change. They argue that these patterns are difficult to explain using the traditional view of gradual evolution. Gould and Eldredge's theory of punctuated equilibria has had a profound impact on evolutionary biology, sparking debate and stimulating new research on the tempo and mode of evolution. It challenges the assumption that evolution is always a gradual process, highlighting the importance of considering the role of rapid evolutionary Events in Shaping the History of Life. Section 9. The evolutionary synthesis and its limitations. Gould examines the evolutionary synthesis, the integration of Darwinian natural selection with Mendelian genetics that took place in the early 20th century. He acknowledges the importance of the evolutionary synthesis in providing a unifying framework for understanding evolutionary processes. He argues that the evolutionary synthesis has certain limitations, particularly in its emphasis on gene-level selection and its neglect of developmental processes. He proposes that a more complete understanding of evolution requires a broader perspective that incorporates insights from developmental biology, paleontology, and other Gould emphasizes the importance of multilevel selection, where selection operates on individuals, genes, and groups. He argues that multilevel selection can lead to evolutionary outcomes that are not easily explained by gene-level selection alone. He points to the example of altruism, where individuals sacrifice their own fitness to benefit others. He suggests that altruism may have evolved through group selection, where groups with altruistic members are more likely to survive and reproduce than groups without altruistic members. Gould's critique of the evolutionary synthesis has stimulated new research on the role of developmental processes in evolution, the importance of multilevel selection, and the limitations of genocentric views of evolution. He has advocated for a more inclusive and integrative approach to evolutionary biology. 1. Recognizes the complexity and interconnectedness of evolutionary processes. Section 10. The application of developmental genetics and evo devo. Gould examines the emerging field of evolutionary developmental biology, often referred to as evo-devo, which integrates insights from developmental biology and evolutionary biology. He highlights the potential of evo-devo to provide a deeper understanding of the relationship between development and evolution. He discusses the discovery of Hox genes, a family of genes that play a key role in regulating body plan development in animals. He notes that Hox genes are highly conserved across diverse animal species, suggesting that they have played a fundamental role in shaping the evolution of animal body plans. Gould suggests that evo-devo can shed light on the origins of evolutionary novelty by revealing how changes in developmental processes can generate new forms and structures. He points to the example of the evolution of insect wings. He suggests that insect wings may have evolved from outgrowths on the body wall that were initially involved in other functions, such as respiration. He proposes that changes in the expression of Hox genes may have led to the elaboration of these outgrowths into functional wings. The field of evo-devo has blossomed in recent decades, providing powerful new tools for studying the relationship between development and evolution. Gould's earlier advocacy for the integration of developmental biology and evolutionary biology has proven to be prescient, as evo-devo has become one of the most exciting and rapidly growing areas of research in biology. Section 11. The legacy of ontogeny and phylogeny. The concluding chapters of ontogeny and phylogeny consider the broader implications of his analysis for understanding the history of life and the nature of evolutionary change. Gould emphasizes the importance of recognizing the complexity of evolutionary processes, cautioning against simplistic or reductionist interpretations. He urges researchers to embrace a more holistic perspective that takes into account the interplay of adaptation, constraint, developmental processes, and historical contingencies. He reiterates that the relationship between ontogeny and phylogeny is complex and multifaceted, defying simple generalizations or recapitulationist interpretations. Gould's work has had a profound impact on the field of evolutionary biology, stimulating new research and challenging traditional assumptions about the nature of evolutionary change. He has played a key role in promoting a more nuanced and integrative approach to the study of evolution, one that recognizes the importance of developmental processes, historical constraints, and the interplay of multiple levels of selection. He suggests that a deeper understanding of the relationship between development and evolution can provide valuable insights into the origins of evolutionary novelty, the patterns of macroevolution, and the nature of human origins. Gould's intellectual contribution altered the trajectory of biological research and remains deeply relevant today. Section 12. Critique of the reductionist perspective. Gould consistently critiques the reductionist perspective that seeks to explain complex phenomena solely in terms of their simplest components. He argues that this perspective often fails to capture the emergent properties and historical contingencies that shape evolutionary processes. He emphasizes the importance of considering the context in which evolutionary change occurs, recognizing that the same genes or developmental processes and have different effects in different environments or at different stages of evolutionary history. He uses the example of the human genome to illustrate his point. He notes that the human genome contains a vast amount of non-coding DNA, which was once dismissed as junk DNA. He argues that this non-coding DNA may play a crucial role in regulating gene expression and developmental processes. Gould proposes that understanding the function of non-coding DNA requires a more holistic perspective that takes into account the complex interactions between genes, regulatory elements, and the environment. He emphasizes the importance of studying the evolution of developmental regulatory networks, which control the timing and location of gene expression during development. He suggests changes in developmental regulatory networks may be a key source of evolutionary innovation. Gould's critique of reductionism has encouraged researchers to adopt a more systems-oriented approach to the study of evolution, one that recognizes the complex interactions between genes, development, and the environment. He has advocated for the integration of multiple levels of analysis, from molecular biology to ecology, to gain a more complete understanding of evolutionary processes. In conclusion, Stephen Jay Gould's Ontogeny and Phylogeny stands as a landmark achievement in evolutionary biology. Its lasting influence stems from its comprehensive and rigorous evaluation of recapitulation theory, its detailed explication of heterochrony, and its profound exploration of the interplay between development and evolution. Gould's insistence on a holistic perspective, his critique of reductionism, and his emphasis on the importance of developmental constraints have shaped the course of evolutionary research. The work continues to inspire scientists and scholars across diverse disciplines, providing a framework for understanding the intricate connections between development, evolution, and the history of life. His insightful analysis, coupled with his elegant prose and intellectual wit, cements his place as one of the most influential evolutionary thinkers of the 20th century.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.